Hello everyone, welcome back to some League of Legends DFS Esports breakdown for slate number 3, October the 9th for the world's main event, day 3, because I just said that. First glance, honestly, not too exciting, but we'll kind of quickly recap yesterday before we get into it. But Rogue getting the upset over DRX, pretty good start to the day at the time. That left us 4-0 with our underdog picks. That quickly came to an end in the next one between EG and G2. EG got completely stomped here. This one was not really close. Again, maybe this is kind of relearning a lesson, but well, before I get ahead of myself, EG or DRX Rogue, DRX still kind of swapping out junglers, going with Yuhan here as opposed to Pioshik. I do think Pioshik is the much better player, so I'm very surprised to see them continuing to make this kind of error, I guess you could say, going in with Yuhan. But nonetheless, Rogue actually looked pretty good. I'm pretty impressed with the team, and we got the underdog pick correct there. I do continue to kind of go down this path of fading DRX a little bit. I'm very not high on the LCK as a whole, the whole Korean region, and especially looking at a team like DRX, where I think they're on the lower end of the teams that are coming from a region that I perceive as weak. So pretty happy with Rogue there. Obviously, came crashing down in the next one when G2 doubled up on the European wins for the day, going 2-0 as they get the win over EG. Again, this one was just not very close at all. I actually wasn't too like, I don't think EG, like, the scoreline does look very one-sided, and it did end up kind of panning out that way. But all things considered, I actually don't think EG played like that bad as kind of it sounds like. I don't know if you guys know me and my opinions and stuff. Typically, I'm not very optimistic about North America as a whole. Usually, I definitely am not somebody who's trying to just like have blind optimism here at all. But I think overall they actually had some like good ideas and stuff. Like, obviously wasn't enough. They ended up kind of getting backfired on quite often. Especially Vulcan and Impact, again, although their numbers look a little bit bad, that's 2 games in a row of them being poor, and really that's what it comes down to. Inspired, Jojo, and Kiori are actually playing pretty well. I just think, I'm not even saying this as a as a scoreboard watching thing, because I guess if you do look at it, Jojo technically had like one of the worst performances, 0-4-0, but nonetheless, Impact, that's two games in a row. Impact has been pretty hard outlaned in the top lane, and Vulcan has been caught out of position, making silly mistakes multiple games in a row as well. So it's just not looking good for EG, especially in their group. It's going to be pretty tough, but I think they do have some spots. Maybe I'm blanking on who's in their group, but does EG have DRX? No, G2, Dom1, JDG. So yeah, it's not looking good. I think EG, they're probably going to end up going 0-6 in this group, but we'll come back to them. I think they have some life going up against G2 in the next one. I don't know, but it's looking pretty doomed for them. Nonetheless, we move on to the next one, Fnatic versus T1. We got this one wrong, and it was a pretty rare big favorite defeat when it comes to T1, and and this spot I did avoid the landmine, because I did feel the odds were a little bit off, but I'm not going to kind of take credit on this one at all. I wasn't necessarily feeling the Fnatic side. Like, I can't pretend or act like I saw this one coming at all. I strictly did not. I don't know, in a way, I kind of had like a slight feeling of that. I did leave off T1 from my DFS stuff, and when you avoid the landmine, it's not the worst thing. But again, we weren't a part of the underdog where maybe we should have or could have. So pretty decent look, good look for Fnatic. We do get an interesting price on them in the next coming up game, and it's a little bit interesting. where this whole group is. It's kind of all up in the air right now. Obviously, C9 are 0-2. I believe the other three teams are 1-1. I feel like that statistically does not make sense. But no, Fnatic is 2-0. Fnatic is at the top of the Fnatic is at the top of the food chain here. They're 2-0. I actually have Fnatic getting out of this group, so this is a pretty big good step forward for me, so I'm excited for that. But nonetheless, we'll move on. EDG C9. I did end up going with the C9 underdog pick here. They are completely looking foolish. I feel like you could kind of attribute both of these to a little bit of an overreaction from from day number one. This is something I definitely try to avoid, and I definitely did so better during play-ins. So that's kind of an unfortunate thing. I don't want to spend too much time going over the recap like I did yesterday. I think yesterday's video was way too long for my liking. But nonetheless, we didn't get the Top Esports avenue correct. They didn't end up going with this funnel strategy that I was anticipating, so Knight would have been needed. I believe Mark, Jackie Love, and Knight all ended up with 50 DraftKings points. Tian was kind of close. He had like 30. Wayward just got he had like 20 or something. It was disappointing. And then JDG got the win over Damwon. This wrapped up not too long ago. Pretty solid performance from both teams. I actually feel like this definitely could have gone either way. The late game avenuing, I don't know how to quite word it, but the kind of late maneuverability from JD Gaming just ended up taking the cake. And I think that's kind of just the difference between these two regions is JD Gaming are practicing and improving on these types of things every single day. And in this tougher league, they're putting themselves in these like riskier positions and they're getting to these more interesting spots. And I just don't think the LCK is putting themselves in a good spot to, learn this kind of thing. So, overall, I think pretty okay on the day. We got one underdog right. We have, let's see, there was just the one underdog that won. I guess two. Fnatic beat T1, but then G2, EDG, Top Esports, JD Gaming, all the big favorites kind of won except for the couple. We were on one, missed one. Overall, we picked, I believe, 4 dogs. Yeah, we picked like 4 dogs. We were lukewarm on T1, and we were pretty confident in the other one with Top Esports. So, pretty bad, I guess, kind of overall. But again, we were going for a lot of dogs, so it is what it is. Slight L on the day. Can't get them all. I think the kind of thing, or the kind of takeaway here is we just overreacted too much to day one. That's really what it was. If we had continued going down our path of fade NA, which is what we did all of day one, and it worked to our success. And if we went with our same tiered kind of game plan that we had from day one, and we applied it to day two, we would have been in a much better position. So I don't know if it's too late to kind of go back to it again for day number 3, because the game plan again, if you guys, I don't know, or I guess are a little bit fuzzy on it, it was fade LCK, fade LCS, look to try to get in some decent LEC and LPL. Those were the 2 avenues. It would have been obviously a fantastic day to do it again, but doesn't go our way, so we move on. To kind of put it bluntly, in this one, I don't have a lot of great feelings on this one. I truly don't. I do not like a lot of these spots. So to kind of quickly kind of check the ones off, like we have 2. We pretty much have 5 big favorites. I believe the smallest one is Top Esports DRX is minus 260 plus 185, and then we have Rogue minus 260, Gam plus 205. Those are the closest odds games here, so there's a lot of big favorites, and I'm just going to kind of quickly run through them. That way, just kind of keep the video length down a little bit. I'm sure you guys don't need the same explanation on these teams multiple days in a row. Gen G, 100 Thieves. I think 100 Thieves are pretty slow. Gen G are kind of a little bit all over the place. A little bit. I don't love this one in the terms of DK, but it definitely is a little bit interesting. We're gonna have it on like the maybe list, and we'll look at it a little bit later as the whole day. But for now, I don't love it. Um, we'll go in order. That's probably a little bit easier. I don't know. I'm jumping around. Um, Rogue Gam. I'm honestly pretty surprised that the odds are this close in this game. This is something I very rarely say. I'm sure you guys, if you guys have been watching for a while, I love going with the underdogs, and I just kind of pick what I pick. I very rarely get to say this, but I'm surprised Rogue are this little of a favorite, or like we have this kind of this narrow of a line here. I think Rogue should be a little bit more in line with I think what some of the other teams are. I think Rogue could definitely. I would not be shocked. Like I would not have been shocked if I were to check these odds here and see Rogue at like a minus 350 or something. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with it. Like I'm pretty surprised by these odds. I like this Rogue spot here for them. I think this is pretty interesting. I think they're a very, very, very good option. They're probably going to be my top pick going into, when we're looking at DraftKings scoring and stuff. We'll look at the kind of team numbers here. Again, these are a little bit weird. They haven't quite translated necessarily exactly to what we're looking at. But I think Rogue, despite their numbers being a little bit low, I think they're still a good spot. Gigabyte Marines, GAM obviously are a team we're looking to kind of get a good bit against. And yeah, I think this is just another good spot. So we look at GAM yesterday. They gave up 23 kills in 25 minutes versus Top Esports. They definitely are willing to throw down a lot. I like Rogue a lot in this spot. They got 20 kills. So I think we're looking at like another 20 to 25 kills, hopefully, for Rogue. I'm definitely interested in this spot for Rogue. They're going to be my top pick, and I'd imagine they're going to be a lot of other people's top pick as well. When it comes to looking at the DraftKings, DraftKings slate and stuff. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited for that one. Again, we just touched on Gen G 100 Thieves. It's like an okay maybe spot, but again, they're going to be big favorites. I just don't love it personally. I just think 100 Thieves don't really give up enough for that, in that one for my liking. The next one up, Edward Gaming versus Fnatic. This is going to be our featured underdog, I believe. I'm pretty surprised by these odds here, to be perfectly honest. So we have a Fnatic team that's 2-0 in their group. Again, they just took down T1 in a relatively dominant fashion. They kind of took down C9 in like a pseudo kind of relatively dominant fashion. I think Fnatic is being heavily underrated, and we're going to look back on these prices. I think it was in a little bit of surprise. I legitimately think that we could see, and we could be looking at a Fnatic team here that makes like semis. Like I legitimately think they've been playing that good, especially Humanoid. Humanoid has been like arguably the best player at this tournament, and factoring in his play-in performances, like he was completely and utterly destroying the people he was playing against. Like I'm heavily looking at Fnatic here. Again, this isn't too much of an overreaction. I liked Fnatic before these groups started. There's a lot to like here. I'm very surprised by these odds being this wide. Again, I could definitely make a pretty good argument that we have EDG as like a relatively slight favorite, and I would not disagree with that. Again, I do think given EDG's pedigree and all that stuff, it's fine. I definitely would say EDG slight favorite, but minus 350, that is pretty crazy to me, if I'm honest. I would have this as like a very close game, and these odds are just crazy to me. I would have this EDG minus 160, 175, something like that. Yeah, for me, these odds are just a little bit diabolical. So I'm going with Fnatic, and I'm going them with like a relatively decently sized level of confidence here. We did see a little bit better of like a performance and draft like from EDG, but again, it's still like a little bit of a weird kind of outdated one. And I think they got heavily favored, or they got heavily like kind of bailed out by Scout being an exceptionally crazy strong player, and he's on the Azir, which is like a good playmaker and that kind of stuff. So I'm pretty pleased with I think EDG. I'm kind of over the place here, sorry, but I think EDG is like a little bit overvalued and over. Yeah, I just think EDG is overvalued and Fnatic is undervalued. This is a very solid Fnatic pick for me. You guys saw me yesterday, and I was a little bit tentative, but I liked a lot of the underdogs, and I think this is a good spot for them here. So, and I think they're going to be my premier underdog to go with some of my other favorites, like we're looking at Rogue, for example, that kind of thing. Cloud9 T1, this is going to be a stay away for me again. I just have not been I've been not enjoying these Cloud9 games. They've lost 15-6, I believe, 15-4 here. They just don't give up enough. They don't fight enough. They don't do enough, and I think they're going to be losing this. I have Cloud9 at this point going 0-6 in their group as well. They could maybe sneak a game off of somebody somewhere along the line. It wouldn't completely shock me again because I do think they have like good players like Berserker and Blabber who can have that like game changing style or ability, that kind of thing. Like I wouldn't be shocked if Cloud9 ended up winning one, but they've looked very, very lifeless as of yet. So I like fading them here, but again, they just have not been dying enough, especially looking at their past couple of games. I just can't justify it. So it's going to be again, it's similar to yesterday, a T1 pick, but a not getting there for DFS. Maybe as a secondary stack, but again, I don't know if you quite want to get there. Up next is RNG Flying Oyster. This one could be a little interesting when it comes to looking at it from a DFS standpoint. When I'm looking at trying to get like an underdog or something here, I actually do kind of see this one being like very, very tentatively possible. I definitely think these odds are a little crazy. -750, best of one. We know how the LPL can drop games and stuff. Again, I think the Flying Oysters actually played like a pretty solid game plan, and they actually looked pretty good in their first game. But again, it's against 100 Thieves, who I think is probably the third best team from like the fourth best region. So like it's just really, really low levels of gameplay overall. So I'm not going to put too much stock into Flying Oysters beating the 100 Thieves in like a game. But again, I just think RNG, like we saw them drop the game versus DFM, nearly dropped 2 games of DFM. Like we just know that these things do happen sometimes where these Chinese teams play with this aggressive style. They put themselves into bad positions. I think Flying Oysters are decent enough to be able to punish them. I don't know. It just feels weird. I just don't want to chase this one too much. Like again, I don't think this would necessarily be that shocking if I like was watching this game and I saw RNG lose this to Flying Oyster, but it's like, do I really want to fire up like a Flying Oyster lineup? Like maybe like it wouldn't be that crazy if I were to make them like 1 out of my 3. Like I've been playing 3 lineups, just kind of mixing and matching like 2, maybe 3, I've been mixing and matching 3 teams usually, maybe a fourth one if there's like a lineup I want to throw in. I could maybe see having a Flying Oyster lineup for myself. Like I wouldn't be Xing them out. Maybe, if I'm making a multiple lineups or that kind of thing, I would have them in as a tentative dart throw. Just because all these narratives, I just think sometimes we see China drop these games. RNG, I think, are maybe getting a little bit too much like the pendulum has swung from one direction all the way back down to the other one, where we saw them be like kind of undervalued. Now I feel like they're being overvalued now. It's just kind of weird, but nonetheless, I'm tentative Flying Oyster, but I'm kind of leaving this one out. I think for a DFS standpoint, I think it's Flying Oysters or nothing. And again, at a small percentage, I think RNG probably win, but again, it's like Flying Oyster. I think in their losses they didn't give up a lot. Um, if we look back at at their stats, they were a pretty slow team. 20 kills, one of the slowest in the entire league. We saw them kind of get there against 100 Thieves, but again, that was a little bit of a sloppy, weird game. So I'm not looking into this one at all. I think this is like a slightest sliver of Flying Oyster, and that's it. DRX Top Esports. This one is a little bit interesting, but again, not really because I'm looking at the underdog. I think this price is like relatively fair, but at the end of the day, I don't love this one. I think this is a fine DK. Like this is a fine DK spot. I probably need like another place to go. Like when I'm looking at these, like I don't love this Gen G one. I don't love the EDG. That's where I'm getting my other underdog from. So like I don't love Gen G. I don't love T1. I don't love RNG. So it's like I got to go kind of somewhere else. I think this is a fine enough spot for me to go with Top Esports against DRX. I think these teams are like kind of close enough, but I think they're kind of definitively the Top Esports team is better. So I could see this one being like a pretty good spot where these teams are kind of close enough to keep it like kind of close where it's not completely one-sided. But at the same time, I think Top Esports are going to be kind of like a tad bit more like better. They're just going to be a definitively better team, I guess I could say. So yeah, it's going to be Top Esports here. I think this is a pretty decent spot. I think this is like going to be I don't want to say straightforward, but I think my builds are going to be pretty clear. I like Rogue a good bit. I like pairing Rogue up with Fnatic a good bit. I think those are probably going to be two of my three lineups, is just different combos of that. But nonetheless, I wouldn't be afraid to mix Top Esports in. We just saw a big performance from them. Again, granted, it was against Gigabyte Marines, but again, I think this is still a decent enough spot. Especially from bottom lane. I believe we saw Jackie Love and Mark both have 100% kill participation in the first game. I obviously don't think that happens again, but yeah, Jackie Love and Mark both had 23 out of 23. That's pretty insane. I would definitely be willing to go back to this again. I think they're going to be decent enough. DRX did give up 20 to Rogue, so it's not like they're completely willing to like roll over and accept defeat. That's how it goes. But nonetheless, I think this is a decent enough spot here for me. So yeah, I like Top Esports versus DRX as my other kind of favorite piece to get in there as well. So yeah, I think that'll kind of be it. Again, we'll kind of scroll through the players here. I want to talk a little bit more about the players and construction overall. I guess kind of loosely related here, but it's back to the Top Esports thing a little bit. We talked about it. It didn't happen. The kind of quote unquote like funnel meta that we were thinking could be possible. Again, if they didn't break it out here, I don't know if they will. It seems like it's unlikely, but am I willing to kind of go back and do the same thing again and just play like Tion, Jackie Love, Mark? I wouldn't be that opposed to it. I definitely think it's like a relatively fair strategy because it's not based on nothing. It's not just Fade Night or what have you. I think this is a very good reason to do it. Do I think you guys should do it? Maybe a little bit. Again, like if you're doing a multiple lineups, maybe you could leave a few in case of Top Esports doing the funnel strategy again, or like doing the funnel strategy, then this is what you want. Again, but it's a pretty unlikely scenario. It's not like they're in the same extreme smash spot like they were yesterday with Gigabyte Marines. But nonetheless, I'd be not afraid to do it. Like if I was doing 5 lineups or something hypothetically, I probably would attribute one to Top Esports, where I have like a Tion captain with a Jackie Love and a Mark or something like that, and just leave off Knight, leave off Wayward as well, have like a 3-3 with something. I think that could definitely come through in a little bit of a different way, where if Knight is put onto a support, then you maybe want to look at another mid laner elsewhere, and it could come through. So overall, when we look at the meta, I think a little bit, one thing to touch on is these carry junglers really kind of didn't have the same effect that they did in day number one. In day one, it was kind of odd. We saw a good bit of like, obviously we saw a lot of like the Sejuani Maokai's, the supportive junglers come through. G2 had this weird Jarvan pick, but that was like a little bit more team comp related, to where it was like associated with the Seraphine and stuff. Again, we had Flying Oyster break out the weird Viego. JDG did as well, but like Inspired went from the Graves, like we had a Graves Lee Sin Vi, and then we had like another Graves Poppy. But on day two was a lot more standard. We had the Trundle Lee Sin. Inspired tried it within Italy, but of course the Sejuani looked a lot better. I think we're getting more into the tank junglers being better avenue. We only saw the one Graves. We saw a lot of Maokai, Sejuani, Poppy. I think those are the ideal junglers. So for that reason, I'm trying to avoid jungle captain kind of as much as possible here. Just when I look at the kind of state, I guess you could say, of what's going on, I just think we're fading away from these these hard carry junglers. Maybe it's going to be different tomorrow, because outside of this JD Gaming Dom1 game, the quote unquote like close games, they didn't quite have the carry junglers. Like we saw the Poppy here, G2 had like the Sejuani here. Like it seems like the only time that we saw that these hard carry junglers came in was like in a like kind of one-sided matchup. I mean, the RNG one is maybe a little bit of an exception, but like we saw JD Gaming bring out the carry jungler in a like one-sided game. Dom 1 like Canyon versus G2, again a pretty like kind of one-sided thing. So I don't know, it just feels like in these kind of close games where both teams are kind of going to be expected to play well, I feel like these tank junglers are going to be a little bit more of a priority, and I'm not trying to get there too much. I'd be interested to see Malrong's champion pool, because I'm not familiar with the player. I'd be lying if I said I was. So that's something I'll look at real quick. But overall, I'm probably looking to try to get as many AD carry, maybe some mid lane captains in. Let's see, Group C, Malrong has a 75% participation with a 12% kill share, so it's very heavily involved around comp. Is he the most expensive player? He really should be. He's pretty cheap, all things considered. So I would definitely look to get captain in a good bit. Larson as well. Let's look at Malrong's champion pool, see if he can bring out something. No, pretty supportive. He has a lot of the Trundle, some Jarvan, Wukong. So like a pretty standard, like relatively supportive champion pool here. I wouldn't expect him to bring out the things like the Graves or the Lee Sin and try to take over a map. He definitely seems more facilitative. So I'd be looking at trying to avoid Malrong captains overall. But again, I think Rogue overall very solid for like kind of across the board. You can make a case to go pretty much anywhere. But again, Odo has had some decent stats. I like him as a decent amount for a top laner. Who else was I kind of considering here? Oh, Fnatic. Humanoid, obviously, very important, I think, a good bit. Wonder stats are okay. You can kind of mix and match between Wonder and... who else was I just talking about? Wonder and Odo Wamne. You kind of flip and flop between those two top laners, but upset captain, upsetting comp, Larson and Humanoid, all four of those carries seem like very strong options. Those seem like pretty good ideas in my opinion. And then what else was the other one I'm looking at? Top Esports DRX. Set group. I guess it's Group C here. Jackie Love 70%, 30%. That's pretty strong. Knight obviously 70-30 as well. You would ideally like to get both of them, but again, there's like a slight caveat there. Marks had been having some insane numbers. I would like to get him in more. I would try to avoid Wayward. He's definitely seems like the lower end option out of the three. And then Tion, again, he's been kind of put in a little bit of a more supportive avenue, but he does have that kind of carry upside potential, I guess you could say, of if they do go to that funnel strategy. So that's heavily where I'm looking at. That's the avenue I'm thinking of. Again, I think there's a few other options. You could look at the Flying Oysters. They do have some pretty solid numbers as well. We see like Mission, and we saw Shun have like a crazy performance before. Yeah, the game before. They have a lot of good options. That's for sure. So there's a lot of options you can go. I would not be afraid to go with the Flying Oysters versus RNG here, but again, I don't quite. It doesn't seem like the best spot. That's for sure. But yeah, there's options, there's avenues. Again, this is, I guess I'd kind of loosely have this as like a pretty big favorite heavy slate, and I just have the one solid underdog I think with Fnatic versus EDG, and then like a relatively dart throwy underdog versus like with Flying Oyster versus RNGs. But I think overall there's actually like a decent amount of like I guess kind of ways you could go with this slate. I don't think it's as straightforward, I guess, maybe as it kind of looks at the surface. But yeah, I think that'll be it for me today. I will see you guys all again tomorrow. Thank you guys for tuning in, and as always, like make sure you guys leave your questions for me or anything. If I'm unclear about something, I do tend to ramble a little bit. So let me know. Thank you guys, and I will see you guys all again tomorrow.